the idea that the U.S. can somehow contain China, quote unquote, is a constant in U.S. politics and speaks to notions of supremacy and is therefore a very dangerous idea in and of itself. But China's economic and technical prowess cannot be stopped. And here are some examples of what I wrote about in this chapter of the book. So in 2019, the National Defense Authorization Act, which is passed annually, first Trump administration, barred government agencies from contracting with companies that use components from Huawei, the Chinese telecom giant. But the Department of Defense, yes, I know now the Department of War, but in any case, at the time, the Department of Defense requested an exemption on the grounds that Huawei was so firmly entrenched around the world that finding a replacement would be impossible. And the Biden administration enacted several bans, including sales of advanced computer chips to China. But of course, what happened? China innovated, created its own chips. And one of the results was the DeepSeek artificial intelligence platform, an open source rival of ChatGPT, created at a fraction of the cost. China excels in building the grid to power AI and now has an oversupply of electricity, while the U.S. struggles with an electrical grid, which is now taxed even further by the construction of data centers around the country. In the immediate wake of the DeepSeek creation, the Trump administration announces a tariff trade war against most of the world, and which featured tariffs of as much as 145% against China. But it was Trump who ended up backing down after China stopped purchasing agriculture products from the U.S., such as soybeans, which they can get from Brazil, or beef, which you can get from Australia. And most importantly, tried to restrict access to rare earth minerals. But recently, Trump and Xi Jinping met, and Trump lowered tariffs back to the 15%, which is what his administration started with. So much for containment. So we have one country producing clean energy because it meets the people's needs, while another promotes fossil fuels because the fossil fuel industry dictates policy. So we see capitalism controlling the United States, but the country emerging as the preeminent economy has done so because it's socialist and makes decisions based on meeting the needs of the people, and thus cannot be contained. Now, I've been fortunate enough to visit China recently, and it was great to be on China's high-speed rail system. About not enough can be said, but it's very funny to me, 25,000 miles, I believe it is, of high-speed rail. And recently, Amtrak announced we've got high-speed rail between Washington and Boston. But these new Acela trains can reach speeds of 160 miles an hour. But the tracks on the route have not been upgraded. They will rarely reach this top speed, which is already low in comparison to China. And the train I was on reached a speed of 186 miles per hour. So, and why is this? Why does the U.S. lag? The U.S. now spends about $900 billion on defense, on the military. That is to say, on the corporations that make up the military-industrial complex. And that one fact alone explains so much about why we don't have the infrastructure that people in China can take for granted. But the U.S. won't take no for an answer. No sooner had Trump been slapped down after his meeting with Xi Jinping that his administration instigated a conflict between China and Japan, whose new prime minister followed Washington's orders, as vassals will do, and made very troubling, threatening comments about Taiwan. China reacted, reminding Japan about their relationship, and took action on trade and transportation and other issues. But this episode shows that military advantage is all that the U.S. has left. It has proxies in Japan or the Philippines or other countries in that region and uses them to antagonize China. But that's all the U.S. has, brute force. which is why the U.S. is the nation that has to be contained. So we see a country that spends money on infrastructure for the public good that is prospering. But meeting human needs is never part of the equation in the U.S., not for capitalists or politicians who are their errand boys and errand girls. It's socialism which provides so many benefits. And the sooner we in the United States, I think I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure you all know this, but the sooner people in the U.S. know this, the better off we will be and the world will be. Thank you all so much.